Hi, everybody, and welcome to the webinar, Problem Solving, Going to Bed, Tantrums, and Following Directions. My name is Amy Bryant, and this is our third workshop of our 4 workshops we're going to have based on Joan Durant's book, Positive Discipline in Everyday Parenting. So today we're going to talk about problem solving, and we're going to use some real-life scenarios to help us focus on the developmental needs that, when we keep them in mind, can really help us problem solve with our children. And we really want to invite y'all to join in our conversation today. So you'll see there's a chat box to the right, and you can use that to sort of join the conversation. If you have a question, you can click on the question box to ask a question. And I just ask that you keep in mind there's about a 10 to 15 second delay. So just be patient with delayed responses and as we sort of get you involved in the conversation. So my name is Amy Bryant of Parenting Beyond Punishment and Wild Child Counseling. I am a licensed board-certified counselor. I'm also an educator and a child advocate. And I have additional training in positive discipline education for parents and educators. And I founded Parenting Beyond Punishment to help parents learn how to guide children and set boundaries without resorting to spanking, yelling, and other punishments. And so today, I'm really looking forward to being in conversation with you and with our guest educators about really how that happens. So I want to start by introducing my co-host and, of course, the woman responsible for making these happen, Robbyn Bennett. Robbyn is a psychotherapist, an educator, and a child advocate who specializes in the treatment of mental health problems due to early abuse and neglect. Her life's work is aimed at ending child abuse and all forms of violence against children. She is the founder of StopSpanking.org, which is a nonprofit dedicated to educating the public on the dangers of spanking. And she is also on the steering committee of the U.S. Alliance to End the Hitting of Children, an organization dedicated to supporting the movement to end spanking in the U.S. Thanks for being here, Robbyn.
Oh, it's great to be here, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation today.
I'd also like to welcome Rachel Bailey and give her a special thank you for facilitating last week. It was just a phenomenal job. Rachel is a mother of 2 daughters. She also has a master's degree in clinical psychology and is a certified positive discipline parent educator. As a trained coach and therapist, she currently teaches parents how to raise children who believe in themselves, make healthy choices, and meet their full potential. She also helps parents redefine the idea of perfect parenting in order to reduce the worry, guilt, helplessness, and desire for perfection that are so often a part of parenting. You can learn more about her at rachel-bailey.com. Thanks for being here, Rachel.
Thanks for having me.
Our 4th guest is Kim Hopkins. She's the mother of a beautiful 4-year-old daughter. She has a master's in clinical social work with a specialization in family therapy. She's both the director of development and a trainer for Lives in the Balance, the nonprofit organization founded by child psychologist Dr. Ross Greene, originator of the Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, CPS, approach, formerly known as collaborative problem solving. She has worked to help schools, residential programs, and other organizations to implement CPS for more than 10 years. Thanks so much for joining us, Kim.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So, I'm getting a little reverb. Are y'all hearing that, or does it sound okay to y'all?
I don't hear it.
Okay.
It sounds good.
Okay. So in the previous 2 webinars, we learned how to work toward our long-term parenting goals by providing our children with warmth and structure that's appropriate to their developmental stage. And then last week, our guest educators talked about specifically about the role of temperament and sensory processing in better understanding our children and our relationship with them and how that can sort of impact it. And today we're going to talk about the causes behind the challenges we have with our kids and then how to problem solve with them, and we're going to use specific examples. So I'm really excited about that. We're going to start by asking our collaborators and maybe some of y'all, what are your ideas about what's important to keep in mind when problem solving with little kids? What kind of ideas do you guys have?
Well, jump on in.
Go ahead, Robbyn.
Rachel, you want to start?
Sure. I think I love talking about the problem behind the behavior because I feel like behavior really is what we focus on, but it's only a symptom. And it's a symptom of what's going on inside the child. And I always tell parents that behavior says more about how your child is feeling than how they feel about you. You know, I use this concept of yuck, and the truth is whenever kids are in yuck, they act out. It's almost inevitable. If a child is misbehaving, they have some sort of yuck inside of them. So if we can figure out what's causing the yuck and solve that problem, the behavior actually goes away. And it does not require punishment. It doesn't require yelling or nagging. What it requires is solving the problem that's causing that yuck.
Yeah.
I like that concept, and I would add that, sorry, I just lost my thoughts. It's a senior moment. After we have kids, right? I was going to say that, the behavior in the moment is the best thing that the kid can think to do. So if they have the yuck, which was just described, and they don't know what to do with it, it's the best thing they can think to do. You know, throwing themselves on the floor is the best thing they can do. They don't have any other ideas for what to do with it, and that's why they need our help and our partnership to help them figure out what to do with it differently and, like you said, solve those problems so that they know what to do with it differently. And then it is interesting how the behavior goes away because the problem is solved. They know what to do. They don't have to throw themselves on the floor or whatever else they might be doing. And it's really neat when we view our role differently as parents and caretakers. Our role, when we think about problem solving, our role is different now. It's not to stand, as we talked about last week, and stand at them wagging our finger saying, you can't do that. Our role is to stand next to them and say, that's interesting that you're doing that. Let's figure out why you're doing that so I can help you do it differently. Yeah. It's a partnership.
Yes, I love that. I always I can't remember, maybe who originally said it, but, our children aren't giving us a hard time. They're having a hard time. And so that idea of partnering with them and saying, whoa, okay, I see that and I see you, and partnering with them to solve it so they can do something different.
One little technological suggestion is that Kim is blipping in and out because she doesn't have a microphone on. And so when you're breathing, Amy, it comes right back to you. So, Kim, I don't know if you have quick access to a microphone or a headset, but if you do, it might help. It might help. Who knows? Technology is a mystery. One of the things I think about problem solving, too, is that when babies, when we have little babies, I think we do a lot of things right, and we sort of assume that the child is having difficulty, I think. So when babies cry, we're trying to figure out if they're wet or hungry or just grouchy or their stomach hurts or something like that. And Paul Hollinger, a psychologist, wrote an article about how when language is introduced to, when a child starts speaking, that we start to assign different meaning to their distress because now they can say, I hate you, or things like that. So the interesting thing about problem solving is trying to understand what's going on inside of the child, what is the nature of their distress, so that they would say that to you, because of course they wouldn't naturally want to say that to you unless they were out of control. So some of it, I think, is just understanding the state of the child and where they're at emotionally. Right. How is that, Kim?
I have something now, but I have to, it's not, my computer's not recognizing it for some reason.
Oh, okay. It'll be fine. It's just technology.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. So we're going to talk a little, let me click it to myself now. I'm going to talk a little bit about some things that Joan Durant talks about in her book, and just about things to keep in mind developmentally, because I think it'll help us all as we continue this discussion. So I'm going to share my screen with you. So, so as we said, we're going to use some examples to discuss the different ways we might problem solve with our children. And I just want to check in with my guests. Is that showing up on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
So we're going to go through the problems, and we're going to keep the child's developmental level in mind. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on developmentally. So between the ages of 1 and 2, they're really learning about their independence, and they're exploring. And here is my daughter exploring the dishwasher. And, it helps to keep in mind that they're so curious, right? And this is really about them growing their brains right here. This sort of exploration is growing their brains. And what we want to do is to figure out how we can keep them safe while they're finding ways to support their own brain development. And then sometime between the ages of 2 and 3, and this can vary a little bit, sometimes it's earlier or later, our children begin to have a better understanding of the world around them. And so they begin to show more fear or more shyness, although that's not really one of my favorite words. And they also want more control over their own bodies, so they want more body autonomy. And they need us to respect their feelings and to keep them safe. And we'll talk about how this might look as we go along this process today. And then between the ages of 3 and 5, they are so curious and they ask so many questions. They love to play pretend. And what they need from us is to respond respectfully to their questions. They need us to explain their rules to them, because they're going to say, why? Why do I need to do that? Why does this have to happen? Why is this unsafe, right? I mean, if you have a child of this age, you know so well all of those questions that come at us all the time sometimes. So, and then they also need us to foster their confidence in their abilities so that they can be confident and so that they can be patient when they're learning about and trying new things for themselves. So we're going to start with our first example. And I'm going to put this up here for now, and then I'll do my best to take it down so we can see our guests. But in this example, the child is aged 2 to 3. So let's say that your child has begun to resist going to bed at night. She cries and cries when you leave her, and you find yourself becoming angry with your child for refusing to go to bed. So I'm going to ask our panel.
Happy to jump in, as I just dealt with this in my house not long ago. And the key for us was, once it became a pattern, like it happened, the first time it happened, I was like, oh, that's probably a fluke, because my daughter was generally pretty good about going to bed, and then it changed. Once it happened the third time, I said, okay, this is becoming a pattern. So the thing that I made sure that we did was and she at the time was just turning 4, so higher on the 3 end, but was talk to her about it when it wasn't bedtime. Because when it is bedtime, she would be amped already and upset. I would then potentially be amped and upset because I'm interested in getting on with my night and doing, packing lunches and everything else we have to do to make sure the house runs smoothly and getting to bed myself at a decent hour. So the key for us is being proactive, and talking about it when it's not bedtime. So she's fine, I'm fine, we're both calm, and trying to figure out what changed. And at the time she had pretty good language skills. She actually wasn't able to volunteer anything, which a younger kid likely isn't going to be able to do, but I could take some guesses, and then she was able to tell me if I was right or wrong. And so, it turned out that suddenly she became afraid of the dark. And that was not really the case before. And she had a light, like a ladybug that does stars on the ceiling, you know, but that she felt wasn't good enough because it turns off after 20 minutes. And so I asked her if she wanted a nightlight. She said that she would like a nightlight. We said, we'll try it. And by now she knows if we try something and it doesn't work, we just talk again and figure something different out, which I think is comforting for her, but she's seen it happen over and over again. So she takes comfort in that herself, which keeps her behavior down. And the nightlight worked, and we haven't had a problem since. It's been months. So again, takeaways being proactive and then trying to be, like we talked about last time, a detective in figuring out what could be happening, you know, what is going on. And developmentally, it's very normal for kids to be afraid of the dark or to start having nightmares at that age. And trying to figure out, you know, how do you help them feel safe if that's what their worry is, in such a way that they're not losing sleep and that you're able to do what you need to do.
Yeah, that's a great example.
I think that's great too, and I think I kind of love that you started by saying that you sort of wanted to get your day going, because I read somewhere someone has said, why does bedtime have to be at night when they're tired and we're tired? Why can't we make it in the morning when we have more energy to deal with it? Which would be lovely, but the truth is that children at this age do have fears, and you know, parents have this incredibly powerful tool that many of us do take advantage of, but we need to be aware of, which is connection. Because when we connect with our kids, we actually have the ability to alleviate their fears. So if we can connect with our kids, so many kids don't want to go to bed because they do get a little bit of connection before bedtime, and so they're craving that so much that they don't want to go to bed. So I love what Kim was saying about being proactive about it, because if you can actually be proactive about the connection as well and maybe give it a little earlier in the day, they're not going to be craving it so much at night, which is really important. I know that's helped a lot of families I've worked with solve that problem.
Yes, I think a lot of times I get this issue a lot in my work, and a lot of times parents are looking for ways to make the nighttime ritual better, because that's where they see the problem happening. But it's interesting because sometimes what I'll notice when I really start working with the children and family is that this child's struggling during the day. And also, a lot of times, I don't know if you've ever had this happen where you're so overwhelmed, you're just sort of pushing through your day, and the last thing you want is your child to have a problem at night with bedtime, because you've been nursing on that idea of having some rest and reading a book or whatever you do in the evening, probably all day. But interestingly, you know, I think what happens is we become, because we're more dysregulated and stressed, we actually are not picking up on subtle cues that have been happening a lot earlier in the day at a time where we could have intervened a lot sooner. And so then it ends up just being crisis management at night, because the child's so dysregulated they can't really tell you what they need, and there's many factors leading to it. So sometimes I think that these behaviors are a red flag for a general stress level that's too high in the home, a lack of connection much earlier in the day. And as parents, I think one of the most common problems we have is that we ignore our bodies and our experience and our fatigue. And the first person to really notice that is our little children, who can't do that. And so they fall apart when there's a lot of pressure being put on them, particularly to go activity to an activity to an activity. I have so many children that say, I just want to relax. And they can go days and days and days without feeling that.
Yeah, I agree with all of what y'all said. I think, you know, today in our society, at least, and lots of them really, our children tend to be scheduled and scheduled and scheduled. So they might go to school in the morning and have an after-school activity later in the afternoon. And I know with my daughter, what she wants to do is just hang out. She wants to hang out we have a swing in our living room. She wants to hang out on the swing in our living room and skate around and just be present with me and not run around. She just wants downtime. And I think we underestimate the power of that downtime. And it may be, for myself, I know sometimes I think, I've been working in the house all day, I want to get out. But she's thinking, I've been out of the house all day, I want to stay in. And so it's finding a way to meet both of our needs. And I try to go for a walk and get outside and find ways to meet both of our needs. So the other thing besides simplifying their schedules, which can be really important, is also maybe simplifying their environments. Is their room a little too chaotic? Is the bedtime routine too chaotic? You know, are there little things we can do really to simplify everything, which I think can make a big difference in that too.
The other thing, if I could add to what you were saying, Amy, is that I do agree that there are a lot of kids who are overscheduled. I also work with a lot of moms, especially stay-at-home moms with younger kids, who say, I'm actually with my child all day, and we're in the house all day, so kids aren't scheduled necessarily. And they say to me, Rachel, I hear this all the time, Rachel, how can I spend more time with my child? I'm with my child all day long.
Yeah.
And I always talk about the difference between quantity time and quality time. Because I think when parents are with their kids all day long, the time they're with them isn't necessarily really connected time. So a lot of kids at night are getting that connected time because they're getting the cuddles and the hugs and the kisses that they're not getting during the day. Because parents are just, you know, we're doing so many things during the day, we're not necessarily connected. So it's just to add to what you were saying for those who aren't overscheduled.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I hear the same thing so much, and I tell parents, as like, you know, how often are we distracted by the dishes and the laundry and our phone and our email and everything else? And even if you just set a timer for 10 minutes, and if you're with your kid all day, you might think they don't need that. I can't believe how distracted I am in 10 minutes when I set my phone. Oh, let me just go get a cup of tea, or let me just turn the laundry over, right? But that, like you said, Rachel, that 10 minutes of real good quality time, maybe even right before bed, can make a world of difference. So thank you for bringing that up.
Can any of you speak to how to do that? Because I think that's something that if I'm in a task mode, then I'm at a higher frequency. So can you give a picture of what it looks like to connect?
Sure.
I can take it, but if someone else wants to talk, I feel like I've been talking a lot.
No, go ahead. You haven't talked too much.
I coach a lot about quality time, and there are a few things that I suggest, and I would love to hear what you guys would add to this. But one of the first things I suggest is naming that time, the name of the child. So for my daughter, it would be Emily time. And then during Emily time, I would actually symbolically do something like put my phone away, so she knew that my attention was fully on her during her time. And I would have it be led by her. And I would, you know, I do this very differently with different parents. I would understand what really fills her bucket, because for me, quality time might look like one thing, but for her, it's something different. So I would help her figure out what Emily time looks like for her, not what I assume it is, but what really makes her feel full of my love. And I would make my quality time, her time, about that.
Yeah, thank you.
I love this idea of Emily time. That's so great. I'm going to ask my husband for some Robbyn time. You know, one of the things that I get to practice a lot because I'm a therapist. Are you guys getting feedback?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I'm not, from you.
Okay.
I'm just going to try to adjust the setting on yours real quick. Now speak and let's see.
How's that?
Mm-hmm.
That better?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, when you hear yourself, you lose your...
Off. I think that helps.
Okay.
One of the things in working with children is I have to get to know them pretty quickly. And so I find that Emily time really works for me as a therapist, because what I do is I try to let go of any of my ideas about what to do next. And that's really actually hard to do, because children are very stimulating too. So when they offer something, I will just try to be very descriptive, like, I notice it's this color, I notice that you're doing this with the sand, or I notice that you're beading a blue bead and then a red one. And I think if we can stay with descriptive language, that will help us not be directive. And if I'm in a tasking mode, it's very easy for me to take that mentality and just shift it right over into my connection to the child and start, you know, sort of directing. So I think Emily time is like, it's a time to follow by using description and waiting for them. That's one way to do it.
Yeah, I'm reflecting on last night and how neither my husband nor I had the energy to do the kind of connecting that we like to do each night, especially after a day that we both worked. And I was doing a lot of self-talk to get myself geared up because I had to play hide and go seek, and I had to do. She loves fantasy play and just directing the play, and it's my worst nightmare. But gearing up to like it and be engaged in it and at least just do it for a chunk of time, and that's usually what helps me is okay, just 15 minutes. I can get through 15 minutes of this and I can actually enjoy some of it if I know there's an end, because I don't really love pretend play. I don't know why, I just don't, but she does it, Jocelyn does it all day long. So I like the discriminating time periods and then maybe switching to something else, like something else that she likes to do. She loves her board games and things like that. So suggesting maybe art or something else that I actually like and my joy will come through. So so there's a balance there to make sure that we don't get lulled into our phones or to the dishes or whatever else might be happening. But I remember last night took a lot for me to get there.
Well, and sometimes what I do, because I don't like hide and seek, except sometimes I'm very fussy about that. I don't know why either. I'll say, can you give me some choices? We're always giving children choices. Well, sometimes I need choices, because if I really don't like what they're doing, they're going to know it.
Yeah.
I'm zoning out. I'm having to dissociate just to get through it, right? Give me a couple of choices, because I really don't like that one. And they'll say, well, why? And I don't know. I'm just grouchy about that. Can you help me out? So it kind of allows them to feel empathy for you, right? Like, oh, okay, I'll give you a break there. But
I love it.
And it brings authenticity to it. You're bringing your real self to the table, and children can appreciate that for sure. Kim, my daughter, loves pretend play too, and I feel your pain. I really do.
Thank you, because I felt horrible for putting that out here, but I just don't like it. Just don't enjoy. Now you say this because I don't get to make up any of the dialogue. So now you move over here, and I'm like, all right.
Yes, it's exactly like that at our house. Exactly. Does anyone want to add anything before we move to the second one? Okay. Let's do this again. Okay. So, in the third example, again, the child is age 2 to 3. So your child loves to play with balls. He loves to bounce them, roll them, sit on them, and throw them. One day you are in a store and he sees a big, bright red ball. He squeals with joy, grabs it off the shelf, and runs away with it. You don't have enough money to buy the ball. You run after him, tell him to put the ball back on the shelf. He cries and begins to have a tantrum. So, who wants to start?
I started last time.
You did.
I'll give someone else a shot.
Tantrums are hard. I mean, I'm not jumping into this one with both feet because there's so much humiliation that comes with it, particularly at a store. And in a way, it's almost like you've already gone down that route and it's the point of no return. So in some ways, I just think it's about how do you hold yourself together so you can stay compassionate, knowing that this is a very judgmental society that we live in. Older people are incredibly disrespectful and insensitive to little children's emotional needs. And it feels bad to be a parent at a store where you're fighting over a ball and, and your own feelings of overwhelm. So that's the first thing I would just say is how do you stay in your body and do breathing and just appreciate that your child is like just desperate for some sort of satisfaction in that moment and can't accept that there'll be something that'll substitute for the ball, maybe something else. And so mirroring might help. But I'll tell you something I think that really works. It's even worked on me in a workshop where I was pretending to have a tantrum, is observe their behavior, their physical gestures, and just make a comment about it. And just be with them and say, I notice you've got hold of that ball and you're holding it really tight. Or I notice, you're on the ground kicking your feet and rolling around. And then you can say something like, you seem really upset. But sometimes that doesn't go over real well. Sometimes just an observation of physically what's going on in the child will help them be aware of what's going on in their body, because it's not overly cognitive, and it doesn't demand a lot from them. It's kind of a simple mirroring.
I agree with that, and this is sort of one of those times where I try to be very proactive, especially when my daughter was younger, like 2 and 3. On the way to the store, I would say, we're going to go to the store, we're just going to get XYZ, we're not going to be buying anything else today, just to sort of set her up to be ready. The other thing that I like to do is, would you like to take that ball with you and we can play with it for a few minutes before we put it away? So you're sort of granting them that wish of, wow, I want this ball, and we already know that they love that ball so much. And so getting that time to play, maybe you set a time limit, we're going to do this for 5 minutes, and I like to set my timer on the phone so I can say, oh, the phone says time's up, and then it's not about me, it's the timer. And so then they do get to play, and they get the connection piece, and they get the limit, and they still could be upset, right? I mean, they still might have that tantrum, but they've had that moment to connect with you. And then if I can take that deep breath and get oxygen to my brain, I can remain emotionally regulated, which then helps my child become emotionally regulated because of those mirror neurons in our brains. So those are some of the things I do in the moments of the tantrum. I get tunnel vision, and I just focus on my child, because if I start thinking about everybody else around me, I'm going to get tense, and my child is going to get more tense. And so I literally use the term tunnel vision, and I just see my child and see their upset and cultivate compassion for her in the moment and compassion for myself in the moment, and just be there. Sometimes I might even bring out my rebel self and say, they can judge me, I don't care, because sometimes we need that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Amy, and Robbyn made this too, that tantrums are so much about our feelings as well, especially when they're in public or when they're in stores. I remember my kids are in preschool, and the preschool administrator said to me, hey, do you want to do a parenting workshop at the preschool? And I said, are you kidding? If people know this is what I do for a living, they're going to be watching my every move. There's no way I want to do a parenting workshop, because it does become about what are they saying about us, what are they, because our child is acting out, or they think we're a bad parent. And it's really important to have that tunnel vision. I completely agree with you, because if we want our kids' emotions to allowed to be let out, then we need to be calm, and we need to be connected with ourselves, and that is so incredibly difficult. But the truth is, their emotions go away more quickly, or are processed more quickly, when we can stay calm. And when we can show them that, everything is okay, I'm still here for you, I love you. But that's really hard to do when, I talked about yuck before in our kids, but we go into yuck as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I often will say, and I borrow this from Cornell University's therapeutic crisis intervention training, but when I get angry or upset, my IQ points just start falling out of my ears. I get really, really, really dumb. I can't think. If I'm upset, I can't think. And so I really appreciate what you've all said about staying regulated, because then you have access to the rational side of your brain, and you can think it through, and you can think about some of the ideas that have been proposed and trying something. Because if you're not regulated, you're not thinking, and you're just going to react with emotion. And we're all human, we all do it, but it's something to practice, and I know I'm practicing it often, and I know what situations are likely to make it harder for me to stay regulated, and then doing some extra strategizing with myself and self-talk to figure out how to overcome those challenges for myself. But I love the different suggestions you made, because everything that you all talked about was about joining and standing side by side with that child who's in that state of mind, and in that emotional space, and trying to be understanding and reflect back to them, and staying calm in the face of it, and trying to say to them, I really understand you would like that. I get it. And I would like you to have it. And we're not able to do that, and that's standing next to them, as opposed to saying, you're not having it, I'm not getting it for you. That's standing across from them. It's the same outcome, except it's the same, how should I say, the same outcome of the ball, except getting there, the process is a lot less messy and can bring it to a close quicker, by standing next to them.
Yeah, the other thing I had to do a lot as a parent, and I love you talking about your experiences, Kim, but the other thing I had to do was reframe how I thought about tantrums. Because if we think of tantrums as these big, horrible things, of course we're going to try to prevent them and stop them and fix them right now. But I actually think of tantrums as a release of yuck that's inside, that we almost want our kids to tantrum in a way, because I don't know if you've ever had those days where your kids are just like really annoying and they're whining and they're complaining. My husband and I will look at each other and almost hope for a tantrum, because then all of that stuff is just going to get out. Because if you notice, kids act so much better after they've actually had the tantrum. It's because their yuck has been released. They've processed their emotions, and they will have emotions when they hit a boundary, when we say you can't have that ball, or let's find another solution. They're going to have emotions, and it's okay for them to release them.
That's a really, really important issue, because for those of us that have been raised in more punitive ways, and I think most of us have because it's culturally the norm, feelings are not allowed. In fact, I don't know how many of our listeners have been spanked and been told not to cry. Even that kind of level of teaching children to cut off feeling. And so if we've been taught to withhold emotion because it frustrates our parents, or withhold emotion because we're going to be punished, so either we're going to be hurt or they're going to withdraw their affection, we may get that feeling when our child starts to tantrum. We may remember in our bodies how dangerous that is. So we have to be aware that we feel more threatened by it than we really need to be, and that may be more of a memory than a truth in the moment. And that the other thing is that I think being present to the suffering of your child, and really to anyone you love, is the most profound gift. And I know for me, I've had to sit with my children, I've had to sit with my grandchildren when they're in pain and when they're tantruming, and sometimes you just can't make the distress go away. And it's made me feel very helpless and powerless, until I really began to realize that what a gift that is. Did I experience that as a child? Not very much. I didn't have anyone that could just sit and tolerate my pain and my distress and my rage and my anger. So some of it is such a gift, to recognize that you're giving your child a gift by just being present and caring about them.
Thank you, Robbyn. I think that it's a really difficult gift to give sometimes, especially if we didn't get it as children, like sitting there through that huge emotional upset that they have, that could be 5 minutes or 25 minutes or an hour and 5 minutes. I mean, it takes some muscle building, I think, a lot.
I'm with you.
So
I mean, I recall feeling like I would want to move away from Jocelyn when she was in the throes of a major tantrum, and I coached myself and worked on move towards her, move towards her, move towards her, and it was very, very difficult at the beginning, and then has gotten easier over time. Situation dependent though, because if my setting conditions are kind of off, if I'm sleepy, if I'm sick or something like that, and then I'm going to have less available to do that. But if all things are at baseline, then I've got my strategies for how I move towards her in such a way that I can tolerate it and be present and stay regulated.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to reinforce what Robbyn was saying before about if we didn't have that, I certainly did not have that growing up where people could be present with me, then it's very hard for us to be able to do it, and we just need to forgive ourselves if we're not able to do this. As important as it is, we need to not be hard on ourselves if we have difficulty. We can get the tools, we can learn it, like we've all been talking about, but you got to give yourself a break if you can't do it in the moment.
You know, another thing too that might help is I think that enduring a tantrum for an hour is unbearable. I really do. So I'm not talking about sitting and just being present for an hour while your child is completely unraveling. I think there's something really wrong if the child is that distressed. But I just want to say that I think Dr. Dan Siegel's work, particularly, I can't remember if it was the Whole Brain Child or his more recent one, No Drama Discipline, it talks about how do you move out of that lower brain reactivity. So when you're at that level, that acute level of distress, and it's going on for a while, it's about, I think, learning the language of the lower brain, which is not words. It is facial expression and movement, and I really emphasize movement. It's moving, and children will often follow you, so you don't have to pick them up and move them. You can say, I'm going to go outside, I'm stressed, or you can get yourself into a downward dog position or a child's pose position if you know how to do that in yoga. Or there's other things you can do, and you can say, I'm overwhelmed with how hard this is for both of us, and you can demonstrate physical movements. Putting the head below the heart will help. Doing very deep breathing exercises, drinking water, but I also really think walking out of the room and going outside, even if you're afraid of having your neighbors put their finger at you and you think bad thoughts, well, too bad for them. They should be loving your child. Life's hard, you know. So you go out there and you walk, and as you walk, that bilateral movement will help your child do the same bilateral movement. And those are all lower brain interventions for calming the stress response so that the vagus reaction of the nerve is not continually activated. So that's body movement, jumping jacks, crossing your arms, particularly these are integrative movements. So those are all things you can do if that tantrum is really just continuing.
I imagine those movements help us as well, Robbyn, right?
Absolutely. They help me because I go seriously lizard brain when I get a lot of noise and screaming, and you know, I have to get my cup of water and moving and doing the breathing, you know.
Yeah. It's hard. It is hard. I think that's why, like you said, it's such a gift. We should write a little bit more about that movement as a calming stress response. I think that's just lovely. Thank you. Well, let's go to the third example. Share my screen again.
And we don't have any questions yet. Just Vanita was just happy that we reinforced the point about that it's a gift, and that to be aware of that is supportive, and that she, it's definitely true for her child.
Yeah. Thank you. So in this example, the child is aged 3 to 5. So you're getting ready to leave for work. Your child is playing quietly with his favorite toys. When you are ready to leave, you tell your child that it is time to go, but he doesn't stop playing. You tell him again, and he still doesn't stop. You start to become frustrated and angry.
Yeah, it sounds like my house. As we talked about last week, my daughter is quite rigid in her thinking sometimes, and how that plays out is she likes to finish something that she has started before moving on to the next, whatever it might be, making the transition. And so similarly to the bedtime example of earlier, once we noticed this was a pattern, talking to her and working with her and partnering with her, collaborating with her when she was not upset and we were not upset, because I know if I'm late, that is one of the things that gets me amped up and heading towards dysregulation land. I just really like to be on time because I'm also rigid myself. And so for us, the best thing to do was to talk about it, kind of get through it when it was happening, and then I'm like, okay, when we get home tonight, we're gonna figure out mornings. And was actually posting on my Facebook page that on the Lives in the Balance Facebook page, I should say, that we just had an iteration of this happening on Friday mornings when she has dance class. And she says she loves dance. I've tried to figure out if it was about dance or any peer things going on in dance or anything like that. She maintains she loves it, and that's in line with my observations. Um, so then I asked her if it had to do with, you're playing and then we're leaving, and are you not done what you're doing? And she said, yes, that's it. And she said, Mommy, I have a lot of work to do on Fridays. And so I said, well, yes, I did notice that. So we worked out a plan that worked part way, and then we revisited it, and because it didn't work the full way, and we adjusted it last week, and it worked. We got out of the house smoothly, so I'm hoping tomorrow that it also works. And I'm taking care, I'm honoring that it's hard for her not to finish, and I'm honoring that there's somewhere we need to be at the same time. And it's a win-win solution. And I think a lot of times with traditional discipline, it's a win-lose proposition where the adult who's got the power is going to win and the child's going to lose. And if it's win-win, you're both getting your needs met. And I'm not doing anything that I'm not okay with doing, because my need of, we have somewhere to be, and it's important that we get there, they're waiting for us or whatnot, still needs to get met in whatever it is we're going to try. So, yeah, there's more to say, but I'm going to let others sort of jump in at this point.
I love what you said, though. You really are taking into consideration your daughter's developmental stage and her temperament and your problem solving. Like, maybe she can't tell me, but let me present what I know about her to her to problem solve with her. That's just, it's brilliant. It's such collaboration.
One of our moms, Claudia, is saying, she says she has this issue with her 2-year-old and would doing a leaving routine of 5 to 10 minutes earlier, would a 2-year-old understand we can play later?
I would love to jump in there, because I sort of wanted to tack on to what Kim was saying too, in that I think these situations, because it's so common when parents, including myself, are frustrated that our kids don't listen. These problems of our kids not listening are actually great opportunities to teach solutions to these problems. So if the problem is that the child is having trouble transitioning, Claudia, I'm not sure that doing it earlier would really help, because it doesn't teach the skills for transitioning. So it's really important, if we understand what the problem is, that they're having a tough time transitioning, we give our children the tools they need to overcome this problem. Because that's really what causes most of lack of cooperation, is that kids just don't have the tools to do what we want them to do. So if we ask them to stop doing that thing that really feels good in the moment, to go do something that they don't want to do or they don't care about, a lot of adults can't do that, but yet we expect children to be able to do that. So if we ask them to do that, I think it's our responsibility, if we have them, to teach them the tools as well. So we might say to our child, I teach transitioning by helping parents teach their children to extend what the child was working on. So if they were playing a game, how can you extend that as you're walking to the next activity? So you could do something like, tell me more about the game while we're walking to the car. Or while you're in the car, can you think about what you want to add to the game next time? So that they're sort of getting these tools to transition their brain as much as their body.
I love that.
So I think that might help a little bit more than starting earlier.
Yes, because Rachel, what you're talking about is bridging the pleasurable activity and hanging on to it as you go through the negative activity or the one that they're not enjoying. And I think the other thing that parents don't recognize is that in the morning we're tasking. So often children are doing activities by themselves as a substitute for connection. That's soothing for them. So when you then ask them to let go of that as well, what are you giving them to bridge, to cope? And I think part of it is to slow down and get into the now for just a minute, get into her world, notice where she is, be on her level. Don't give the directive from across the room, because children are more aroused in the morning because we're a little bit more distracted, and so they're having to self-regulate, which they don't do that well. And so those activities become actually more important to them than they normally would be. So You know, if I grew up in a home where I wasn't listened to, I might miss the point here and think my child's not listening to me, but actually my child is soothing, they're self-soothing. So then how do I use co-regulation as a way to get them to let go of that? And that's why I love what Rachel's talking about.
I think there can be some benefit in leaving earlier, if only just to practice those skills that Rachel was talking about. So if you start a little bit earlier, just so that you can begin to start that process and begin to say to your child, you know, I really want to hear more about what you're doing. You know, do you want to bring it with you? You know, whether if they're coloring, can they bring it to the car? But, you know, it might take a few mornings of starting earlier to do it.
Yeah, that's true.
And then she added to that, how can I get him to leave his toys because we have to leave? And I think that's a great question. I mean, some of it is it a toy he can bring with him in the car? And if it's not a toy, is there some way that he can say bye to it? Does he want to say bye to his toy? And sometimes that can be really helpful. Or like Rachel was saying, you know, tell me how you want to use that toy when you leave, and then that can help him. And if you can remain regulated, you know, that helps our children remain regulated as you start to do that process.
Maybe also if it needs to be left behind at home, putting it in a special place that the child picks.
Yeah, my daughter loves that.
Michelle asked a question that goes back to our earlier discussion around bedtime. Can I introduce her question? Yes. She said, we have created bad habits around bedtime. Kids shared a room for a 3.5-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl. Boy is getting up after our good nights. Girl falls asleep on dad while I deal with my son. I feel my son is going through a phase out of nap schedule, but my daughter is now used to falling asleep on her dad, and we can't get her to sleep in her crib anymore. The children share the room, so we are on the same floor moving, but not for another year. How do I get my daughter to bed without disrupting my son or adding another room onto the house? She puts a smiley face. At least she's smiling. The tough one.
Right? It's complicated. You know, I wonder if you can start a routine where they begin to go to bed together. You know, can dad lay down with her? I mean, she's 2. It's possible she could move to a small bed and dad could lay down with her while she falls asleep and while her brother is going to sleep too, so that there's less disruption. I mean, holding hands. My daughter loves to hold my hands when she goes to sleep, and she's not 2 anymore. And I think it's okay. You know, it's just a part of helping them learn those skills.
Yeah, I always think with going to bed and creating new routines, it's such a hard one, but I think I always suggest for parents to take things in baby steps, first of all. So it's not realistic probably to think that she's going to change from going to sleep on her dad to going to sleep by herself. So breaking things up in small baby steps, and along the way giving her tools, which, I mean, she's 2, so she's young, so you have to do a lot of modeling, but giving her tools to calm herself down. So maybe something that smells like her dad or like you, or so that each time you take a new step, she learns to regulate herself. And maybe Robbyn can speak more to this too, because I know you talk a lot about how to help regulate. But it's really about taking baby steps, having your expectations be realistic, and giving both her and you the tools to soothe yourself as the steps progress. Because every time you take a new one, there might be a little bit of anxiety or nervousness.
A friend of mine did just that, and I remember at the end, her feet would be in the doorway, and so her son could see her feet. That was like the last step, but I just thought that was precious. But it definitely did it in steps over time.
Well, we're on time, and there's one more question. I hope I can just put this out here. She says, Janice says, my son is suddenly having trouble with drop-off time at his daycare. He used to be super excited to go to school, and he would wave goodbye to me cheerfully, but now he's crying, he's resisting, he doesn't want me to leave. Nothing much seems to have changed. He loves school, oops, hang on, he loves school and doesn't seem to be having any troubles there. He just doesn't seem to want to leave. He doesn't want me to leave. Any thoughts on how I can reassure him and help him feel more comfortable with me leaving? How old is he? He seems to be daycare. I'm not sure. Jana, can you? Oh, yeah. Amy, you already asked how old he was. That's right. That would help.
We definitely went through that at different phases. It happened when she was real little, around 18 months, and then it got better, and then it happened, same school, and it happened again, you know, around 2.5 years, and then it happened again around 3.5 years, and each time it seemed to take something different to remedy. And I did what this mother did, as far as, first I looked at school and has anything changed? Is there anything going on with the friends? Is there something going on with the teachers? Does she seem unhappy? And that was all ruled out. And so it just seemed to be about the attachment piece. And you know, I'm trying to remember what we did when she was younger, but I can remember the 3.5, when it happened at 3.5, because that was more recent. We came up with a goodbye ritual that involved something like, you know, it's like 2 hugs, 3 kisses in a certain order, and then waving from a certain window and blowing a kiss when I did that, like just certain things that she wanted as part of the ritual. And she, the teachers also helped by, you know, holding her hand, you know, right when she was done with the ritual and getting her engaged in something. But yeah, that would be probably the thing I think about first, is the goodbye ritual.
Yeah. We did something similar. My daughter just decided to come up with a wiggly jiggly hug, and that seemed to work. I'm getting reverb, are y'all?
Yes.
The other thing I think. Now I'm getting reverb too. You're getting it from me?
Doesn't it sound that bad?
Okay.
If you can ignore it.
Yes, I will try. The other thing I think that's important, and again, this is very hard, is that when our children are flooded with fear, and that I'm assuming that's what's going on, developmentally it's appropriate for a 2-year-old to get more nervous because they're realizing what the world is like. But it's so important that we stay calm, because our kids are looking to us to see if the world is safe. And so if they're anxious and they see us and we're also thinking, oh my gosh, what should I do? It makes them even more resistant to leaving us. So although this is very hard, if we can work on our own tools and be really confident about leaving our kids there, helps them tremendously.
You know, I'll just say this other little piece, which is, you know, I would try to allow the child to tell me when to go, to give your little one more control over the goodbye. And it might take a while at first, but he may actually begin to do it more easily. But also, because he's 2, he may not be able to tell you things that have happened that have bothered him. So parts of school still may be enjoyable, but sometimes relationships get ruptured in some way. Like, you know, I don't know if he feels differently about some of the daycare providers. So I would just spend time there and see, when he's not worried about you leaving because he has control over it, who does he connect with? What's the quality of the connection? Does he seem to have the same feeling about people in the preschool as he has had in the past? And just stay open. I wouldn't close the door that nothing's wrong at school. We just don't know what. We just don't know if there's something wrong. And the only reason I do that is because at that age, because he can't talk, we're in the dark. I mean, he can speak a little bit, but sometimes children have a hard time telling you about something that happened a while ago.
Good point.
I also like something. It's still doing. I'm going to try turning on.
And Claudia here says that the goodbye ritual worked for her 3-year-old, and she also read somewhere not to say you're okay, because it makes it seem like something is wrong. Say, see you later, have a great day.
I like that. I was going to add something, but I think it's so echoey.
It doesn't sound echoey when you're talking for me.
Okay. I'll try to not get lizard. So one thing I really like to talk about at Hands in Hand Parenting and Parenting by Connection is sort of playing with your child around his challenge, which is saying goodbye at daycare. So maybe saying, let's pretend that we're at daycare and we're saying goodbye, and you could be silly, and you could play, and you could just really let him process it. I'm going to say try to follow his lead. So if he gets silly and playful and comes with you, do it. Say, okay, and playing in that way can really help him process that goodbye in another way. And then also incorporating a special goodbye has been successful for me and apparently a lot of other people as well. So I think they call it play with Hands in Hand. Hands.org site.
It's rehearsal.
It is.
It's great. And the more we rehearse, the more familiar things are. Are you able to turn my volume down, Amy?
Yes.
That might help. Yeah, so the more we rehearse, the more comfortable we are at predicting what's going to occur, and the lower our anxiety.
Well, we are at the top of the hour. Does anyone want to add anything?
Great discussion today.
It really was. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to read off some of the other events we have coming up, especially we have one tomorrow. It's going to be more about collaborative problem solving. I'm going to speak with Amy Phoenix of Presence Parenting tomorrow on a free live parenting call. And I think I can pop this up. You can click on that link and register for it. And again, it's free. It's tomorrow night. And if you can't join us live, if you register, you'll receive a link for the replay. And she's actually going to be talking about Dr. Ross Green's work. So it'll be pretty exciting. I'm sure I'm going to learn more. And then on Monday of next week, Tina Hill is going to be joining me, and we're going to be talking about raising an emotionally intelligent child. On Tuesday of next week, Maya Coleman and Kathy Gordon of Hands in Hand Parenting are offering a free parenting call about helping children with persistent behavior struggles. Then on Thursday of next week, we'll all be back for our fourth and final workshop, and I hope that you join us for that. And you can register for all of these upcoming events at parentingbeyondpunishment.com, and you just click on the 2015 Peaceful Parenting No Spank Challenge link. So be sure to go there and register for those. Robbyn, Rachel, and Kim, thank you so much for being here today. Y'all are just great to talk with, and I love hearing your ideas and experience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.